Welcome to a very different fifth one here on Strikes Our Fancy. I think this is going to be the first time that we have not had Craig. No, actually, it's the second time because we did another fifth one.
That was planned, though. This one is spur of the moment.
Right. Yep. Unfortunately, Craig, well, he couldn't make it. Some illness.
And it kind of ties into the topic of the night.
Right. Yeah. So today, I was thinking a good topic might be how difficult it is to get a group of adults, maybe anybody, but I only really have the experience with adults, how difficult it is to get people together for board games or tabletop role-playing or really anything.
Rob, we're adults, we have lives, we have jobs.
I don't care.
And illnesses.
I want to play D&D with you. Come on, man.
I want to know what happens at the Witchlight.
Yeah, exactly.
And nothing's happening so far. So what's your stance here? What's your big rant?
Before we get going, I am Ramblin' Rob, and as always, I have
Cat Calling Caleb.
All right, not really related to the topic today, but okay, it'll work. So yeah, it is hard. It's really hard. And as a person who's kind of forever a DM, it often falls to me to get everybody together, set times and everything.
You're the one wrangling, like sending out the texts and sending out when to do's.
Yeah. I did hear I heard an interesting theory about that every group, if you want to play anything with a group of people, you need to have a captain. And that usually does fall to the DM.
Yeah. But
it doesn't have to be. And I've kind of noticed you're running a D&D campaign for us right now, kind of.
Sporadically.
Yeah. And I've kind of noticed that I don't say anything. That doesn't happen.
You're my co-captain there.
Yeah, right. But yeah, you just need someone who is going to get everybody together and find a time that works.
I think there's a sense of like who's really actually interested in playing, and you don't feel like for me personally, like as a DM, I'm like, do I really want to bring this up again? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit better to have a player to bring it up like, hey, when we playing? And I'm like, yes. Sure. So it feels a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, that is great. Never had that. I don't know what that's like. No, that's not entirely fair. I did at one point, very, very early when I first started DMing, we did like a trial campaign kind of thing. Lasted 3 games. And then it was done.
Mm.
And we set it aside. The next few times we got together, we played board games. We did other things. And after, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, someone asked me, hey, are we going to play D&D again? And you know what? That felt great. That is quite the choice feeling.
It was better than getting married. Better than your wedding day, Rob.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And I did invite my wife to defend herself, and she didn't want to come, so...
So that's just the truth of the matter now.
It's the truth, yep.
What was the game you guys were playing?
Well, so we started off playing kind of a custom, it wasn't really a campaign.
Mm.
It was, I decided, hey, I want to play D&D. So I made a dungeon, made an excuse for everybody to be in it. Or
you made a dungeon?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, I used one of those tools to kind of map it out, and then I populated it with crap. So I didn't really make a dungeon.
Is that typically easier for you to do, or do you love the modules that's presented to you?
I love the modules. I find if I try to create from scratch, I get really bogged down in the details. Every time I start like designing a dungeon, I end up thinking, oh, it'd be really cool if there was like a switchback hallway here.
Oh, yeah.
But why would that be in a building? Who would build that? And then I have to like come up with this elaborate backstory on why it is. And suddenly it's like 3.5 hours later, and I'm still working on one hallway.
The hallway.
Yeah.
And then you better like put it in the game somehow. Otherwise, it's all for naught, right? Like they better find like a parchment paper, like, oh, there's a history of the building here.
Yeah, exactly.
Of this, not the building, this particular hallway.
You enter a hallway and you see a fresco on the wall. Which, that is another kind of a factor in getting everyone together, because as much as I hate to admit it, I'm a last minute planner. So to answer your question, modules, for sure. They answer those questions for me.
Yeah.
And when they don't, it's easier for me to say, look, I know there's a reason. I just don't know it.
And it's usually the satisfying answer for the player.
Right.
Like they're just like, oh, okay. And they just move on.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's ever asked, hey, why is this hallway like this?
Yeah.
Who built this room?
And who would though, right? Like, but you're as the DM, you're sitting there like, why does this make sense for me? Mm-hmm. But your players are like, I just want to kill something. Yeah, where's the gold?
Yeah. That's why we're in a dungeon, to find a dragon.
That's the name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So that was your first not full, but like 3 sessions of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Your games, for the most part, have been directed by you. Like, you're the one sending out the text. You're the one making sure things are on the rails.
Yes, almost entirely. Occasionally, if there's, a long gap where nobody can make a game for a few months, if I don't say anything, somebody might show up asking, hey, we gonna get back together with this? But yeah, I find, at least for me, I'm kind of our team captain.
Yeah.
Now, when Craig, he was running a game for us, he really did take the initiative, and we kind of planned, I think it was every Thursday or every other Thursday.
Yeah, yeah.
And I find having that loose plan is kind of a good idea. I think for the next game that I run, I'm definitely going to like set a schedule, and maybe we don't hit it every single time, but I'm even going to tell everybody who's playing, like, hey, let's plan this day, every second Saturday or whatever it is. Let's make that a standing plan. And if you have something more important, obviously go do that, but kind of treat it like you would if you were in like the Rotary Club or, something important.
Yeah.
Like this is think of it as a social obligation. Yeah, you can get out of it if you have to go to a wedding or something.
Yeah. But otherwise, your ass better be in the chair.
But you better
be
exploring. Yeah. Plan your week around.
Your life revolves around me now.
Yep.
I think part of the reason it worked too was it was in the middle of the week for 2 hours. I think that was his plan. Mm-hmm. Like 2 to 3 hours was, I think like 2 hours was his cutoff. Yeah. Which it was middle of the week. It was a work day. I think everybody's cutoff was about like 10 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah. And I think having that nice solidified, we're done now, was nice.
Right. Yeah. And definitely being in the middle of the week when nobody's going to ask you, hey, you want to go out dancing on Wednesday?
Yeah. Hardly anybody's getting drinks on a Wednesday night,
Right.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I wish I could do that, but I tend to get carried away.
Oh, like you need to keep going. Like once the train gets going, it's going.
Right. Well, I find a lot of times, and I think Craig, as a DM, he really manages well. But I find a lot of times, about an hour and a half in, that's when everybody gets going. Right? That's the prime role playing time. The juices are flowing.
The alcohol is flowing, Rob.
Yeah. Sometimes. Not on those Wednesday night sessions.
Not on the Wednesday nights, yeah.
But yeah, everybody's kind of loosened up. We're used to role playing and we're doing good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need more time. I cannot do a weeknight game because, again, I'll never stop.
4 hours was, I think, the kind of the standard, I think, for the Saturday night games with you. Regular 8 to 12, 8 to 1-ish, or was it about 9 to 12?
Yeah, it pretty much varied, but yeah, that was probably the usual amount of time, but we regularly went past 1, even 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
because I could easily do a 6-7 hour night.
Have you ever done like that long of a session?
Oh yeah. The first group I ever played with, it was me, my wife, and then 2 of our friends. And almost every time it was an 8 to 2 a.m.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But it was good because you could do, you could really do like an adventuring day in that amount of time. You could do, you can have some role playing. You could have a combat or two.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me that Dungeons and Dragons, especially, kind of coming out of the high school era of let's get together on a Saturday night and play D&D all day. It has a lot of that still in its roots. It kind of works well if you do that.
Especially for adults, though, it's mostly nights. Yeah.
For adults, I think that's one thing that makes it harder because if I say to you, like, hey, let's come over and watch an episode of Buffy and record a podcast about it, that's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But when I say, hey, let's go sit around my table for 6 hours
and hallucinate vividly.
Right. And suddenly I've blocked off the majority of your day. Really.
Which, most of the time I'm not doing anything. So let's hallucinate together. Guide me on my hallucination, Rob.
You got it.
So what do you think is the biggest hurdle for most D&D groups when it comes to the big scheduling problem?
I really think it's just people are tired. I got shit to do, man.
Yeah.
I mentioned before, I'm kind of a last minute planner. It's because the rest of the week I've got things that need to happen. And, you get home after work, you've got a couple of hours, but you gotta, do your laundry, dishes, eat.
Life.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately.
So are you saying if somebody texted you at like 6:30 and like, Rob, D&D at 7, would you be there?
Ooh. I want to say yes. That's a real toughie though.
Yeah.
I don't know. Especially, having kids, that makes it harder. Now, if I were just a guy living in a 1-bedroom apartment or whatever, had nobody else in my life, absolutely.
Rob, you ain't need to call me out like that, but that's fine.
Even at 2 bedrooms. Yeah, if I didn't have work or anything, for sure I would be there. You could text me, hey, we've got an open seat at the table. We're starting right now. And I'd be like, all right, I'll get there as soon as I can.
I got the markers. I got the maps. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for the most part, whenever we played, it was about a 2-year time frame for Tomb of Annihilation-ish, 2.5-ish, maybe. It seems like it was pretty, for the most part, consecutive of every other Saturday.
Right.
Every other Saturday.
And I think that was because we kind of planned out, we said, let's think every other Saturday. And then at the end of the session, I would always ask, do you guys think we can make next Saturday or 2 Saturdays from now? And, sometimes we couldn't. But I think that was probably really the key was at the end of the session, we plan when the next one's going to be.
Yeah. And it was, I think, 2 sessions a month is doable, for the most part. Because that's what it roughly boils down to, isn't it?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I was on nights at the time. So that's kind of, I had every other weekend off, supposedly.
Yeah.
So that kind of worked out for everybody.
Right. Well, I think we could have, because really before you joined, we were doing a weekly session. And then when you started coming in, Craig and Carrie, who were our other 2, they still came over the other weekends. We just did something else.
Yeah.
And that might have been, even more of a factor than I think it was, that was kind of our standing date, was Saturday at our house, board games, and if Caleb's available, D&D.
D&D, yeah. What would you say to somebody trying to get into D&D? Obviously, this is about, working around schedules and stuff, but like people who are worried about that, like, I just don't have the time for D&D. What would you say to somebody trying to get into D&D like that?
So I spent a lot of time wanting to play D&D, but never playing it for that exact reason. It's hard to get people together. And moreover, I didn't know how to play the game.
Mm.
And I was always like hoping for that invitation. It never came until, again, I kind of became the team captain. I invited everybody I knew.
Mm.
I think I invited like 14 people to my first game. 4 showed up.
Whoa.
Let me rephrase that. 2 showed up plus me and my wife.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to get into D&D and you don't have a group, you can't find a group, you live in a small town or whatever, you got to become the captain. You have to steer the ship.
People want to try.
People do want to try, absolutely. But kind of one of the hardest jobs, and it does unfortunately fall to the DM a lot, just adding more to their plate. But one of the hardest jobs is wrangling all the cats and getting them into a room together.
You have the catnip. That's your job.
Well, the catnip is all the dice.
Yeah. It is. People talk about, you get into D&D and you start buying that. You really do. Like, mm-hmm. I just got into it and I went to the gaming store and I bought like 3 dice sets. And I was like, it's just so nice. They're so pretty.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I had to stop. Because at one point I bought a pound of dice. It's a product that Chessex sells. And it's just, I think it's like all their rejects or, the dice that are good enough, but they couldn't put them in a set for whatever reason. And that's really why I have so many dice, is because I bought 2 of those, put them together because I wanted to have, again, team captain, I wanted to have dice so if someone shows up and they forgot everything, at least they've got dice and I've got pencils.
Mm-hmm. And that's really all you need, dice and pencils.
Right, yeah. Unless you want to play the same character you've been playing. That's why I try to collect everybody's character sheets so they stay with the game.
Yeah. Did you know that of the 14 invited that only 2 were going to show up? Or did you expect more?
I was hoping for more.
Yeah.
But I knew not everybody would show up.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when nobody RSVP'd.
Yeah.
I invited more than I could reasonably handle with the knowledge that they wouldn't show.
Which, as somebody who's DM'd a couple games, starting with 3 players in a DM is probably perfect.
Yeah, things move quickly, but you get to see how the game works.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think my first game was 7 to 8 players.
Oh my god!
And it was hectic.
Yeah, but at least you had played at that point.
I had played, and I knew what I was doing, ish.
Yeah,
but it just takes so long.
It does, especially combat.
Is that something that was on your mind when you was like, I just want to roll some dice and kill things, or was it the story that kind of drew
you? That's a good question. So I was planning to be the DM, so I wouldn't be doing the killing, really.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'd have to say it probably really was the story.
Mm. Well, the DM never plans to kill anybody.
Yeah, that's true. But I must say, I do like rolling dice.
How often do you fudge dice? Or is this too much past the screen?
I can't tell you, man.
Okay.
No, I do fudge dice. And some people would probably say I do it too much. I'll fudge dice if it's narratively interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes I do even fudge dice against the players. I think most DMs, when they think of fudging dice, they think, "Oh man, that's going to be a killing shot. Let's make that a 15." So or instead of a 20, you know?
Yeah.
But, no, I've definitely I've had a few where it's like the last enemy and the battle went a lot quicker than I thought it would. So that last guy, he starts hitting pretty hard.
Yeah.
But actually, I do find that frequently as a DM, I roll much higher than I do on the other side of the screen.
Do you use different dice?
No.
That's just how the cookie crumbles. That's just what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird. Do you fudge dice?
All the time.
Oh, yeah?
Especially when I work with two women, and they were stuck in the room with me for 12 hours. So I forced them to play one module with me. Or it was a session.
Caleb, I think that's called kidnapping?
A little bit. There was no chains involved, but if they left, they wouldn't get paid. So that's kind of the same thing. One of them was clearly not into it.
Oh, for sure.
But the other one was right there with me. So that was nice.
At least you gave it a shot. Right?
Exactly. That's
all you can ask for.
And I brought dice. I brought the whole nine. And them never having played before, it was like you got to guide your new players, you know, because they're just like, what can I do?
Yeah, especially if you're with an entire group of new players where they don't get to see others and kind of form an opinion on what they should be doing.
Yeah.
What they can do.
Mm. And I've always took what Craig told us, which is you can do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
You know, which doesn't help at all, by the way. But that was kind of the mantra I would tell them, and then I'll try to lead them somewhere different. Mm-hmm. But there wasn't much to fudge that time.
Sure.
But for the game with like 8 people, I would fudge in favor of the monsters half the time because they're just railing against the monsters. Mm-hmm. There's 8 of them. So like they're going to kill these things pretty freaking fast.
Right.
You know,
one thing that I've heard that's been really helpful is when that's happening, bring in some reinforcements.
Oh yeah.
Because especially 5th edition D&D, it is all about the action economy.
Mm.
And he who has most turns is going to win that battle.
Yeah, yeah. You go by the module, what the module tells you, and it's always suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I gave their highest suggestion, and there was still not enough.
Oh, yeah.
So, obviously, I didn't even think to add more. And part of me thinks it comes off a little forced, like, here comes more, you know? But that's just my own personal...
Yeah, so sometimes I try to do a trick where one enemy tries to run away to get reinforcements. That never works. Because inevitably, if someone starts running away, all the players gang up on that guy.
Because they know what's happening. You don't let one get away.
It's true, yeah. Well, but I think even if they're clearly just running away because they're scared and they don't want to be there.
You still kill them.
Yeah. No matter what, every group devolves into murder hobos when someone tries to get away.
Have you ever tried to not let that happen? Or is it just, it's just inevitable?
To not let the players
just start stabbing. Yeah.
There have been a few times, I think, where, someone tries to attack an enemy and I say, are you sure this guy looks pretty strong? Or, hey, if you do that, you're going to alert everybody else around. But for the most part, despite the fact that once combat starts, everybody is extremely stabby.
Yeah.
I find that players try to avoid combat.
Yeah.
Quite easily. I remember one encounter, and I struggle to say that. It was like maybe 2 sessions before you joined our last game. Craig's character opened a door and he saw a skeleton in a room that was like harvesting fungus.
Mm.
But his back was turned, so the skeleton didn't see them open the door. So he's just working away, and if they would have gone in, it would have been a combat encounter.
Mm.
But since they could get away with it, they just closed the door and left. Like they just completely skipped over that room. And who knows? There might have been something good in there.
Well, also, what's that? They're probably first level.
Yeah, that was very.
You can die by a skeleton pretty easily.
Yeah, one skeleton can kill 3 players if it rolls lucky.
And that's obviously that's not the goal for that first session.
No, not at all.
So, as your cat wrangler, or as the cat wrangler for your players, what is your goal for meetings a month? Is it just 2? Would you like more? Like, what's your goal?
I mean, if it were me, we'd be meeting 3 or 4 times a week. I love role-playing games. And it wouldn't even have to necessarily be the same game. Like, it could be anything.
Yeah.
But no, really, my ideal would be a standing weekly game. And that way, if somebody can't make a game, then it doesn't suddenly become a month between sessions.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's always the worst, is when you're planning a bi-weekly game and someone can't make it for whatever reason, then, well, it's been a month now, and then, oh, yeah, now something else has come up, and now you're 2 months out.
Yeah.
So I like to try to do a weekly game, but I find a bi-weekly game is just much easier to do.
Yeah.
And I'd ask you the same question, but I don't think you do a lot of the wrangling.
No, not really. I think we've had 4 sessions, 2 in the spring, 2 in the winter.
What would be your ideal, though?
Honestly, it would be similar. Probably a weekly game. But I also think a lot of people get overwhelmed socially with role-playing games.
Right.
In the sense that, like, I think some people, they have to put on the social face kind of all day, and then they have to come and do it at night. Even if it's with your friends. I think sometimes it's a little difficult to kind of keep that up. So I think...
It works for me because it's a different face.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. It can be exhausting, and even if you love it, and you're just a player, you're not even the DM, there's still a lot to keep track of. There's still a lot that you have to know and plan for. If you're a spellcaster, you've got to know your spells. Even if you're not a spellcaster, if you're a martial character, there's a lot to know. There's a lot to think about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you miss anything, your game's probably, cut in half just because you didn't know how to utilize your character well enough. Not to poo-poo role-playing games. It is a lot of work. I mean, to kind of maintain. But that's not a bad thing either. Because, I mean, if you're passionate about it.
Right. And I think it's definitely interesting work.
Mm.
And I've said it before, and I'll continue saying it. It's why I love being a DM. Because I really, as much as I recognize that it is work, it doesn't feel like that to me.
Yeah.
And for me, it feels like when I'm not playing the game, I still get to be part of it, because the whole time I'm thinking about, what are all these characters doing? What's going on in the world, and what evil twists can I give my players when we get back together?
How can I kill each and every single one of these guys?
Or more to my plan, how do I get this character to turn on the rest? Which, in my experience, the way you do that is say, hey, Caleb, do you want to be a traitor?
And I immediately agree, because it sounds so fun.
You lose a character, but you gain a story.
Yeah. How many games have you been a part of, kind of in general, for role-playing? Not just Dungeons & Dragons, but,
That's a good question. Sometimes it feels like I live and breathe tabletop role playing, but I really haven't played that much. I had a 2-session game long ago. I had then the next time I ever played anything was when I ran Curse of Strahd for some friends. Well, we started off with a little homebrew thing, but then I bought Curse of Strahd and we played that. And then the next time I played was Tomb of Annihilation with you guys. And then
and that was the longest one, I'm assuming.
That was the longest. It's the only one that's ever gone to completion.
Yeah.
And I played a couple of games of Star Trek Adventures and just some other random games. I really haven't played that much.
And for each and every single one of them, you've been the Wrangler.
No.
Nope.
Again, Craig was his Wrangler.
Yeah.
And some of the games I've played online, I've joined, and they fell apart. And I kind of feel like because the GM wasn't prepared to bring everyone together weekly. And I think that's a lot harder with an online game.
Yeah.
Because nobody takes it as seriously. Even me, I really wanted to play in this game. It was a Friday night game, and I was like, I don't really want to do this right now.
How's that changed things for you? Because we played online for Tomb for about a year due to COVID. But obviously we knew each other. We were all kind of, we had that inherent relationship. How did not having that inherent relationship change for that online game?
That's a hard thing to answer because there were really two things going on there. When we transitioned to online, yeah, we were all friends, but also there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
It was a captive audience.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing anything else on a Saturday night. So that was actually the longest uninterrupted stretch of bi-weekly games. And for a moment in that time, you were working days and we did play weekly.
Yeah.
Really COVID made it a lot easier. COVID and playing online, so nobody had to, get up and go anywhere.
Thank God for COVID.
Yeah. I miss it.
I miss those peak COVID days.
We need another quarantine. Maybe don't put that on.
But so obviously, yeah, COVID affected that in that direction. But you didn't have any affiliation with none of the online folk. Mm-hmm. Those other online folk. Did that have any effect? Like, I have no.
Probably there was. We did generate a rapport because we would. Kind of like you do at any tabletop game where you spend the first 30 minutes or so just bullshitting, just talking. And it was actually really great. We were playing Star Trek Adventures and they were all huge mega fans. Like guys that went to conventions regularly and, talked to cast and crew. So learned a lot about the show, which was really interesting. And I enjoyed most of them. There was one guy I really didn't care for. But, we did kind of develop a little bit of a friendship, I think. And I think if the game would have lasted longer, it might have worked out. But, one person just stopped showing up.
Yeah.
And then another one, he got another job and it was like a really great opportunity, but he wouldn't be able to make the time. And I don't know why. Nobody was receptive to the idea of just doing it at a different time.
Nobody wanted to change. Staunchly against it.
Right. Yeah. I suggested it so many times, and mostly the GM, he didn't want to change, but everybody else was just like, yeah, whatever. I'm not doing a different time.
Surprisingly enough, the show about change.
Yeah.
The fans of it were resistant. They're like, no.
No, we're not doing that. Then, we could never find another person. So there was a point where it was the GM and me and one other, and he didn't want to run for two people.
Yeah.
So just stopped playing, and then eventually the game dissolved.
And was that your only experience with an online group that wasn't a prior established group of real life friends?
Yeah, that was. I played a couple of other kind of like pick up one-off games. That was the only experience I've ever had with like an ongoing game. I find all too frequently online games, the time is just not good for me.
Yeah.
And that's probably a problem with online games because really the GM picks a time. This is the time I'm going to play. And if you can't make it, you can't make it.
Yeah.
And I get it because it's not like the GM is coming out and saying, hey, I want to play a game with you guys. When can we do it? It's the GM saying, hey, I want to play a game. Who's available when I'm available?
Yeah. There's they're resistant to change. They're just like, work with me. I'm not going to work with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a really uncharitable view of what's going on there because it's not like, well, I'm unwilling to work with you, but it's more of a, who the hell are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, they're not, with an in-person group, you're usually playing with your friends and those are the specific people you want to play with.
Yeah.
So let's find a time. When can Caleb come? When can Craig come? Versus, I just want to play a game. Who's here when I'm available?
When can Romulan Gal 360 come?
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares about Rom Gal 360. So obviously, the atmosphere, I think, changes a bit with the real life, real friends portion and the actual online portion where people are just like random. Did you find that it was more fun just meeting random people? Or do you prefer the real life, I would rather get together with my friends?
Good question. I think I would much rather get together with my friends. It is interesting to meet other people that way. And especially, you already have something in common. We want to play this game together.
Yeah.
And to that end, I think it is a great way to meet people. But, we have in town a new board game shop just opened up and they have space for gaming.
Yeah.
That would be a great place to try to run a game and meet new people.
Yeah.
I haven't done it. I'm not that interested.
You're not that interested in actually going over there and trying it?
Yeah. Well, going over there and like running a game to meet people with.
God forbid, I don't want to meet new people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's always a crapshoot, especially when you're doing it in a physical location.
Yeah.
Where kind of who shows up is who shows up and who's going to play with you.
Yeah.
And what if it's a smelly guy?
And and you never know how they're going to react to anything. Mm-hmm. Oh, I had a bad roll and they flipped the table.
Right. Well, I think a lot of role-playing games have started addressing those types of issues more frequently. A lot of like the newer D&D books, they'll dedicate a chapter to, well, especially the DM books, they'll dedicate a chapter to handling players. Even Modifius does it too with some of their books where they'll have a chapter on GMing. And it specifically, there are call-outs to understand how your players might react. And if you think they're going to react poorly to something, either try to avoid that or talk to them about it and make sure they're cool with it.
Yeah.
But again, that gets harder with random people that you just met. But then you also have, on that same token, for random people that you just met, a lot of games are bringing into, I actually recently found out Roll20 now has red cards as just part of the system.
Yeah.
So it's just a button you click, says red card, and none of the players can see it except for the GM. The GM sees, hey, Caleb clicked red card. So if they're receptive to this idea, and in my experience, a lot of people are, they'll stop the game, go private with that player and discuss, hey, what's going on? Why is this not acceptable to you? Why can't we do this?
Yeah.
And that's really to avoid, explicit themes that someone's not comfortable with. I actually, when you play online a lot nowadays, you'll have to fill out a questionnaire. A lot of GMs do this where they make you fill out a questionnaire and you list like your fears and phobias and what's too far. I was talking to a guy once who he really takes that seriously, and he says, seriously, put down anything that's not a problem, that is a problem with you, because he ran a game where the villain was a clown.
Whoa.
And he thought like, oh, it's a creepy clown, whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are afraid of clowns, but it's not really like a phobia for them. But in this one game, there was a guy who just could not handle even the thought of a clown.
Yeah.
And it was too much for them.
Yeah.
So they kind of derailed the game.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, because this guy just really couldn't handle it.
And you can't really change your big bad kind of halfway through.
Yeah. So, again, that's where playing with friends really comes in handy, because you kind of know how they're going to react to different things.
Yeah.
I assume you don't have any huge phobias that we don't know about would hurt it.
Spiders. But, if I wouldn't, freak out over a spider in a video or in the game.
Yeah. I can pull out a spider mini and you're okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to be...
But if you couldn't... Knowing that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Planning your sessions.
But I laugh about it, but also that is a pretty cool feature that's happening nowadays. Hey, mental health is something that needs to be taken care of. And if this word is overused nowadays and in a derogatory sense, but if this would trigger you, let's not include it.
Right, yeah.
What was the clown? How was he the big bad?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh. I was just
it was just an offhand conversation, but it stuck with me that you need to worry about what your players can deal with.
Yeah.
And it is kind of interesting because at the time the GM was using questionnaires and saying, hey, if you have anything that is off limits, let me know. The dude just didn't write it. I don't know if he forgot or he thought it wasn't a big deal. But it wasn't on the list, and dude ended up using a clown and just couldn't handle it.
So he probably didn't go see it, chapters 1 or 2.
Probably not,
okay.
No. Not to make fun of that guy, because, again, gaming table's not the place to
Yeah. And again, that is unfortunate that happened. Have you ever had anything like that happen at your own personal table? Whether you were the DM or the player in a real life situation, have you ever had anything like that happen?
No, I really haven't. Again, I play with friends. So everyone I've played with has been pretty, nobody has a real phobia that would stop a game. And I'm not interested in playing explicit themes or anything like that. So for me, it's never been an issue. What about you? You ever?
Well, I will say that
because you played with work people.
Yeah, and we never really got too far. They were all focused on killing things.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy. They didn't really get too far into the role play. The only role play specific people I've ever played with were you guys. And I will say that when my character started flirting with the Minotaur, I was honestly a little worried. I was like, because we were role playing a little bit, not too explicitly, but we were role playing a little bit as DM and player. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't want to make Rob uncomfortable with this either. So I tried not to do it too much, but there is a bunch of drunk rabble rousers who kind of encourage that behavior as well. So I was like, I tried not to lean too much into it because, again, I don't want to make the table uncomfortable, that type of thing.
I will never get uncomfortable by Minotaur romance. And if I do, we'll just fade to black.
Okay. He's like, and we're done for the night.
Yeah. And Roland and the Minotaur went off into the bushes. And it was a loud and raucous good time.
I mean, they can't anymore. Roland's dead. Unfortunately. So, or is he, Rob? I don't know.
Well, we've been kind of rambling. This wasn't exactly. I guess my name at the beginning was right.
Yeah.
We've wound around the subject and brought up other ideas, which I guess is appropriate for a fifth one.
Yeah. We just a rambling one, I guess, about D&D.
So do you have any final thoughts on getting everybody together?
Catnip.
Margaritas?
Margaritas, most definitely. That is the catnip.
Yep.
Snacks.
Snacks are always good. And find a signature snack for your table.
One of the things I want to point out is Rob and Jody always have the best spread whenever they host anything. So it's always awesome. I'd always thought that you guys bought it from like a store, but then I saw you guys actually putting it together one night, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like, yeah, you guys are like making it look nice on the charcuterie board.
Charcuterie board.
Yeah.
I don't know,
but I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it is store bought. We don't make it though. We don't make our own cheese.
But in all honesty, you need a wrangler. I think that's our main thing. You need somebody who's willing to point out, "Hey, it's been 6 months. Maybe we should play Witchlight around Christmas."
So it has been about 3 months.
Yeah, it's been about that time. Yeah,
time flies, man. But yeah, I mean, those are my kind of final thoughts too. Yeah, you definitely need a wrangler. You need someone to set the time. But I think when you start the game, it definitely helps to have an idea of how frequently you want to play.
I'd agree with that.
And I think that's where, not to say, Caleb, you're a piece of shit. I think that's where we went wrong with Witchlight was it was a, hey, I want to run this next week.
Yeah.
And then we got together and there was no plan for a session.
It just happens whenever we're feeling it.
Yeah.
Whenever we're feeling it.
I'm always feeling it.
I'm always feeling it. If only I could get the other players to feel that way, Rob.
Mm-hmm. I think we could. I think others are feeling it more than you think they are.
I guess I'm getting in my own head about it, maybe. But yeah. But I would say also that, like, if you ever want to run your own game, just do it. Like,
Absolutely.
it's not that hard. I mean, it's mostly set up. Once you get going, it's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely just do it. I mean, nobody's going to remember your first session anyway.
No. They're going to compare you to Matt Mercer relentlessly, but...
What do you mean you don't do voices?
I was just getting ready to say that.
So, thank you for joining us on this fifth one extravaganza. I'm still Rob.
So again, I think I hardly ever do these, but I think you can find us on, we got rid of Twitter, Instagram at StrikesAreFancy, our email at strikesarefancy@gmail.com.
Yep.
And
ourfancy.site.
Ourfancy.site. There it is.
And of course, we always welcome feedback from listeners. We have a new feature from Anchor.fm. If you find us on there, you can get the link on our website, probably on Instagram too.
Hey, this is Craig popping in real quick during the editing process. You can find the link to what Rob is talking about in the details of this episode down below. Click that link. Unfortunately, you got to make a login. But if you do, after that, every episode we make, you can tell us how wrong we are and submit us an audio clip, and we will respond to pretty much anything you have to say for us, because we are desperate for engagement.
Send us a voice clip, and if we like what you say, or we really don't like what you say...
You're going to be featured.
You're going to be, yeah, I mean, pretty much if you record anything, that's a guaranteed in. But if you have any thoughts, let us know one way or another. We will respond to you.
Let us know how you keep D&D games going. That's what this is about.
So thank you for joining us on this winding fifth one path. I'm still Rob.
And I'm constantly shit.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Fuck it. I'm Caleb.
Yeah, there you go.